Good day. My name is Aytül Kasapoglu, first author of this presentation, and the second author is Dr. Simay Ozlu. The name of my presentation is Africans in the Relationship Between Human Mobility and Disaster, the case of Ankara-Turkey. Presentation plan contains 3 parts, and due to the war conditions in our region, my presentation will be online. Actually, I have about 60 slides, but I intend to go through many slides very quickly as I want to spend more time on the theoretical framework about relational integration, as well as suggestions I listed at the end. The reason for this is that I think that the suggestions we developed with wise experts using the Delphi technique are quite meaningful for the sociology of disaster and migration focused on relational integration. Certainly, disasters are not the same in general, and immigrants as an unexpected major population movements are also considered as disasters in this context. Africans and disaster relationship, I can say Africans are migrating from their countries due to their various reasons, considered disasters. They have the capacity to cause disasters in Turkey, and migration from Africa to Turkey is a disaster-focused process. The reasons of the process is very comprehensive, but population density is the common feature for Africa and Turkey. In this process, locals are victims as much as immigrants. In this context, both citizens of the target country and immigrants are now being conceptualized as disaster victims, because economic and political instabilities are increasing, as well as the demographic structure of the target country, I mean Turkey. This figure shows victims of the process, local and immigrants together. And I would like to talk about research problems. Many social scientists, especially Rabat and Bourdieu, argue that international migration, especially undocumented and irregular forms, are detrimental, I mean hazardous to migrants. And as Harvey also stated, this situation is a necessary and inherent condition for the capitalist system. And finally, the definition of research problem. The migration phenomenon in Turkey carries the risk of turning into a disaster in the process. In other words, it has the potential for locals and migrants to become disaster victims. And in this context, the main research questions formulated as: can relational integration be an alternative to manage disaster migration, disaster process? As I will explain in more detail later, the study titled Relational Integration, from Integrating Migrants to Integrating Social Relations, prepared by Lee Klerendick, which we had the chance to read recently, has been extremely guiding in the formation of the theoretical framework of our research. In fact, Young also deserves all kinds of appreciation. And objectives in the context of African migrant students, there are 5 objectives, 5 questions. What are the reasons for choosing Turkey? What are the most important problems they experience in Turkey, I mean in Ankara? What are the coping strategies for these problems? What are the future plans? How can relational integration can be achieved? The importance of our research up to date, population movements that occur after disaster have been studied all over the world. In this study, both pre-migration and after-migration potential disaster is conceptualized together. And Turkey has received a lot of migrants in recent years. Studying African migration is in fact an important step in understanding the disaster process. Limitations of our research. This study is based on information obtained from African students. The presentation is based on qualitative data. I would like to talk about the host family project. Our main and more comprehensive research is the host family project, which was also approved by the Scientific Research Council of Turkey. It is aimed for African students and Turkish families to get to know each other by doing at least 10 traditional activities. The project is being carried out by Turkish sociologists under my supervision. And this study that I'm going to present is relational sociological research. Non-comparisons were made in the presentation of the slides according to the gender or ethnic characteristics of the participants. And the concept of relational integration was used in the study. The reason for this preference is that the local population in Turkey is as fragile and sensitive under various risks as the immigrants. Instead of approach that requires immigrants to adapt to the majority local population in Turkey and aims to change them, research was planned for an integration that allows immigrants and locals to integrate with each other. According to this perspective, the main concept is relational inequality. Integration is a subheading of the concept of inequality. Some further information I would like to provide for you. First of all, the concept of relational integration is not only concerned with whether African immigrants resemble the majority Turkish society, but also with how the relations of oppression and domination in Turkey generally operate. And B, in fact, relational inequality is not only about the equal distribution of goods and services, it is more about how these goods and services are distributed, who is included in the distribution process, and who is excluded. SC, relational inequality occurs when some individuals or groups are placed in higher or lower positions within society. This inequality is increased over time and cause significant problems. Some people are seen as less morally valuable and have less say in society. And Young's 5 basic forms of oppression also important for our research: dominance, exploitation, marginalization, demeaning, and violence. Methodology. In our study, the concept data collected from 15 African students in accordance with grounded theory methodology were presented through figures starting from open and axial coding strategies. Then the core concept was reached and the story was written. Grounded theory methodology, according to Creswell, the most commonly used qualitative research tradition. And there are, in this methodology, there are 4 stages: open coding, axial coding, reaching the core concept, conclusion by writing a story with the help of metaphors. Finding and discussion. They are grouped under 2 main headings: reasons for African immigrants, students for choosing Turkey, war in the country, political and ideological pressures, demand for democracy, and this is also figurized in this picture. Scholarships of Turkey, war, terror, and political climate, democracy and freedom, better education and opportunity to migrate to third countries, and non-colonial and Islamic historical background of Turkey can be beste.